Hello, friends. Here I am again. Let's try that once. Microphone. Yeah. I said, hello, friends. Here I am again. Okay. So you get to see one of my little minor mistakes at the beginning of this video. Guess what? I will make more of them in the future, not to spite you or to irritate you, but just because I'm not perfect. And that should be no surprise to anyone. If I were a little more perfect, I might edit the video, and that may be coming. I don't know. You know, I can be self-critical about the way I record these things and don't edit them and then upload them. But why bother? I watched just now, or rather, I didn't watch. I started to watch some people's offerings, their videos, little group of people chatting on Rumble. And minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes tick by, and they're playing music. They're showing people dancing. This goes on for about 8 minutes, and then they come on and they're doing small talk for another 5 minutes, and then they start talking about substantive things, and what they're saying really isn't revelatory in any way, shape, or form. It's kind of obvious. So I don't know. Those people get subscribers, and I'm not out to do a shoddy job in any way, shape, or form. But I'm just here to be my natural self and to present whatever I present in the best way I can in an impromptu manner. Okay. So here I am today to share with you some of my most recent thoughts. And this is going to be kind of a potpourri. I don't know if a theme will emerge or it'll just be one thing after another without very strong connections between them and without an overriding theme. We'll see. But I've accumulated some things I felt were worth sharing. So let's see. I sent an email to my friend, and there was a reason for it. My friend sent me a link to an X post, which was talking about the latest geoengineering scam and pointing out that people are up in arms about it and discussing what to do to stop it, and that there's a particular person who's proud of himself for creating the idea, and he's been given the green light to go ahead with it by whatever regulatory agency there is. Now we know that we're becoming very conscious that regulatory agencies are run by agents of the left, which is to say agents of the deep state. I think it's fair to make a close equivalency. They're not exactly the same thing, but I would say the political left in this country over time has become the boots on the ground, so to speak, or the the public-facing operatives of the deep state. So here's what I wrote to my friend. I said, of course, the matter highlighted on the X post that you shared is concerning, but it is small potatoes when viewed in context. Somehow everyone expects the Trump admin to address every problem, which a beneficent government would or will one day get around to doing. But, you know, I think they're starting, that is, the administration is starting with what is, in their best judgment, the biggest issues and working their way down to the minutiae, so to speak, minutiae. And at best, there will have to be a great deal of ripple effect, which is forming up nicely worldwide, although it's a gradual process. So, what do we have to look forward to? Steady, but in the beginning, slow progress. That's really the point of this email. And I continue. We now have the Trump team, whom the Galactic Federation of Worlds assure us are good guys, although imperfect and capable of making errors in judgment, policy, and action. So we need not hold back from criticizing them. We could, but let's say whether we articulate them, you know, to others or not, we may have reservations about some of the things they're doing. That's okay. So you have the Trump team on the one side and the deep state, which Trump has promised to obliterate on the other side. The deep state having ill intentions and specializing in deception as well as causing harm in other more directly tangible ways, which is to say more directly tangible than just lying left, right, and center, and deceiving and mischaracterizing and generally trying to manipulate the people. That's you and me psychologically. They're scrabbling for power. They're looking for a place to get a little bit of purchase, a little bit more purchase than they already have. Now they have some degree of purchase in the psyches of, I would say, roughly 20 to 30% of the American people. And that's far too much, in my opinion. I'd be more comfortable seeing it well under 10%. And I think we're getting there. It's natural that, especially at this stage, yes, the stage we're currently going through of transition into the golden age of America and the world and humanity, Terran humanity, the Trump team will get their faces blackened with attributed guilt for things the deep state are in fact doing and for not stopping the deep state from doing some of their evil nonsense. So you look around and you see, oh, this bad thing is still happening and that bad thing is still happening. And if Trump and his team were really on our side, that wouldn't be happening. Well, that's your opinion and that's a projection. Okay? I mean, think about it, please. It reminds me a little bit, if you don't mind me digressing momentarily, but it reminds me of people talking about aliens. And they say, well, if there were aliens, they would do this and they would do that, and they would think this way and they would think that way. And the fact is, you're anthropomorphizing and you're making unwarranted assumptions. They could be completely psychotic, and their view of the world could be like our view of the world when we were on DMT, for all we know, right? And I haven't had any personal experience with DMT, but I've watched my share of Terrence McKenna and Dennis McKenna videos and all that sort of thing, and interviews with people who are doing research into like whether the perception of things and the experience of things that people whose brains are infused with DMT to a significant degree, it has any validity. Is it all just um, a fantasy essentially, or are people actually looking into a different dimension of reality in essence, seeing things that actually exist, but that are not normally perceptible to us? But that is a digression. Okay, so my point is, don't assume that either the deep state or even Team Trump think like you do, think like I do, think like normal people or average people because they're above average, okay? And they're especially above average when it comes to understanding what they're doing, which we very well may not. So, my offer of a suggestion to my friend is let's remember to take a deep breath and be patient and focus on expressing appreciation for every good thing that the White Hats are doing on our behalf. Okay, now I'm going to try here to share my screen with you, and I say contemplate the math. Okay, and this is going to be a little bit probably too large, but that's okay. Well, hold on, maybe not. Hmm. Let me rearrange things a little bit here. Aha, that's beautiful. Okay. Now the problem is how do I get back here? There we go. There's Zoom. I'm going to share my screen. Dang. See share. Hmm. Nope. Hmm. Okay, friends. Looks like I may have messed up. Select camera. Right. Well, why don't I have screen sharing? Host tools. Allow all participants to share screen. So it looks like I'm not. Ah. Let's see. One participant can share. Okay. Right. Well, that's that's cool, but not really. So I really want to share the screen. It's really sad that I can't. Anyway, it's a graph. And here's what you can do for me because I'm not having success figuring this out as to how to share my screen. Go look up on the internet. You can look them up maybe together or separately. Graphs of the exponential function and the geometric function. They're similar, but the exponential function grows faster. And what you will see is you'll see like time as the x-axis and something else. Let's see if I can determine what it is here. Population size, but it could be anything, right? So this is talking about maybe like bacteria in a petri dish and how quickly the population size grows over time. So the graph is set up with time running from 0 to 20, um, in terms of minutes, days, weeks, hours, whatever it is, right? And during the interval 0 to 5, not much is happening. There's a little bit of increase, and you can see things are starting to take off just a little bit. And in the next equal time period, the next 5 units, from 5 to 10, well, it goes up to maybe from, let's say, 2 to 12 or something like that. And then by the time you get to 15, it's up at 40 or 42 or something like that. And then by the time you hit 20, it's up at 150. So it goes very slowly at first, and then it goes more and more and more rapidly. And what's the point, right? So I say we're currently in the range t greater than 0 and less than 5, where population growth, or improvement appears too small and perhaps uncertain. But as the momentum of positive change compounds, look where we will be when 15 is less than t is less than 20. So, things are going to improve dramatically. I'm going to pause for a moment if I can do that. All right. So, please forgive the math if you're one of those people whose eyes glaze over when they're confronted with math or a graph. But I'm just saying, if you look at an actual graph, you'll see that lovely exponential curve and then the geometric curve, which is a little less. But I'm using those as models of how Trump's 47th presidency can be expected to turn out, in my opinion, as just what I anticipate based on the intel received through Elena Danaan from the Galactic Federation of Worlds. So right now, 2025 is going to be the most difficult, the craziest year in terms of people not being sure which way things are going. Trump could stumble. The administration could like trip over something and do a face plant. But even if it does that, it'll get up and it'll start going again. So don't get all, you know, don't go, oh my God, we're all going to die, because that we're assured is not going to happen. So I said I'll make a YouTube video on this subject. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing, my friends. And sorry about the lighting, you know. One of these days I actually have one of those circular lights. So you'll get to see the little reflections in my eyeglasses. That's what I don't like about that. And I don't have to be bright, and I don't want to be bright. You have some orangish light coming from that way and some grayish light coming from that way. And there's a white light over my head with some blue radiation coming down. And you have the earth behind me. And I look like I'm out in space. But when I'm looking at things on the screen, all that white light shines in my eyes. Let's see. So I have some other things I want to share with you. And of course, this is geopolitical stuff, but it's relevant, isn't it? Of course, it's relevant. It's relevant to our lives. Excuse me, right now. Stephen Miller. Do you know who Stephen Miller is? Do you care who Stephen Miller is? I'm going to put a couple of video links in the description to this video. Go, and if you haven't seen these videos, watch them. There's one. I mean, I suggest you watch them. You don't have to. You can just listen to my summaries if you want. But one of them is Stephen Miller, who's a White House spokesperson. Maybe you're most familiar with Carolyn Levitt, but Stephen Miller is not the press secretary, right? He's something else. I don't remember what exactly, but he does often interact with reporters. He's interviewed a lot. And here's what I have to say about Stephen Miller, and it's all complimentary. Um, so he's extremely knowledgeable. He knows the answers to just about every question. He doesn't get ahead of the president. The people surrounding Trump are very good about that. But he knows what policy is. He knows what Trump is thinking, because Trump himself is very transparent, right? And so he's talking to all of his staff. Um, they're all very well informed. And Stephen Miller obviously has a mind that is like a multi-terabyte database system, just full of facts. And he can trot those facts out in answer to a question. But he goes far beyond that. I mean, Carolyn Levitt is the same way, but Miller is super exemplary to me in that he can reason on the facts. He can tell you what they mean. He can apply facts and reasoning, and he's incredibly articulate. And he speaks rapidly. He's very good at making a case for things. And in this video with Jake Tapper, who I think is CNN reporter. They're interacting, and Tapper's trying to do his job. He's asking questions that tiny minority of the American people, the Democrats, and of course, like I said, they're scrabbling. They're trying to find purchase. So he's trying to find purchase with the administration, and the way the questions are asked repeatedly seems to imply, oh, well, we can't understand what Trump is doing. I mean, how could somebody do something like that? We're worried about this and we're fearful about that. And it's trying to cultivate in the minds of the listeners this predetermined mindset, which really appeals to, I have to say it, okay, people with a low consciousness vibration. Um, and this is something that going back a few years, and I heard somebody mention this, they were talking about David Hawkins, who was introduced to the world by, I believe it was Wayne Dyer. Okay, so these are people sort of well known or Wayne Dyer was well known as a sort of pop psychologist, self-improvement guy, um, who offered perspectives on the way your mind works and how you can improve your psychological functioning to be more successful in life and happier. So nothing wrong with all that, as long as it contains enough truth that people can run with it and actually make some progress. But Dr. Dyer discovered David Hawkins, who lived in near Sedona here, which is not far from where I live. And I think Hawkins lived out in the country. There is wilderness out here with dirt roads and gravel roads and things like that. So anyway, he thought Dr. Hawkins was very knowledgeable, perspicacious, articulate, and so on. So he said, "You need to write books and you need to go on speaking tours." And I think Dr. Hawkins was not doing all that well financially at the time. So he said, okay, I'll do that. I mean, for his own self-interest, but also because here was somebody saying, I think you have great wisdom and you need to share it with the world and other people will benefit. So Hawkins' first book was called Power versus Force, and he wrote, I think, two others. And I was enthralled and thrilled with Power versus Force, but by the time I got to his third book, I could see that he had, or he had developed, I think he always had, a very significant ego. He was very full of himself and propounding himself as a great teacher and citing the fact that some other people perceived him as such. But nothing necessarily all that wrong with that. But he also, his teachings kind of, to me, seem to get more and more questionable and deviant. And a lot of the ideas that he had introduced in Power versus Force, rather dogmatically, had been called into question, and he hadn't really been able to address that. So we, the world, eventually, people who were interested found out that he was supposed to be a psychiatrist, right? So he had his degree from Columbia Pacific University. You may not have heard of that entity, but some decades ago, it came to prominence in a bad way as a diploma mill. You could send them $3,000 and an essay talking about your experience in developing and applying a particular type of knowledge and skills, and you would get back a PhD degree from this so-called university, which had offices in Los Angeles, which they defined as their campus. We have this wonderful campus here in this, you know. I've been down the street. Okay, it's a well-known street in Los Angeles, And there's nothing impressive there, and there are no campuses there, unless you consider, you know, a family restaurant and its landscaping as a campus or something like that. And there are office buildings and hotels and motels and things like that. But not too much in the way of university campuses that I was able to detect driving down that road. Now, I didn't drive the full length of it, so what do I know, really? But it's just not an area of the city where you would expect to find a prestigious university. So anyway, that was where Dr. Hawkins' um, degree came from, and so should he be taken seriously? I don't know. It's up to you. You'll read his books and decide for yourself. But I just told you what my impression was. So anyway, Dr. Hawkins made a particular contribution, which was a chart of levels of consciousness. And I think this may have been borrowed and updated by a company I'm now following on YouTube, which is a married couple, and they do some interesting work. So I'm paying attention to this. I'm being influenced by it. Now, I don't know really and truly how scientific it is. It doesn't have to be scientific. It can be highly intuitive in nature and still have some value and be somewhat perspicacious. And I can relate to some of what they say. Okay, so anyway, the idea of levels of consciousness or frequency in those terms kind of goes like your level of awareness, your level of expansion. So there are some people that are very closed in, and they operate out of, say, for example, fear and worry. And then there's a higher level, which is more like objective acceptance. And a person at that level, if there's something really to fear, you know, and careful intellectual assessment tells them there's danger somewhere, they're going to take appropriate measures to protect themselves. And at the same time, if their objective assessment, they do their vetting of whoever or whatever, and they say, I can trust and I can integrate with and effectively work with that person or that organization, then they will freely do that. And they're not prone to paranoia, let's say, and not prone to excessive, harsh criticism of every little thing that they can see wrong or suboptimal. But a person who's focused on fear, worry, and doubt is going to focus on those things. And I know about this by personal experience because in my youth, I was very sort of hypercritical of myself and others, and very excessively condemnatory. And I can come across that way a little bit sometimes now. I mean, if there's something and I really think it's bad, I can do a very good characterization and description of it in negative terms. Maybe it's a little bit excessive at times, okay? But I can reflect back on my past and say, I'm a lot more balanced now, and I can open my heart more easily with love and acceptance. And and then you have the issues of tolerance. What are you tolerating? What are you willing to tolerate? Truly, we should have boundaries. You shouldn't have to have the mindset of I'll tolerate anything. I don't care what people do. If I know of some pedophilia that's going on, I'm just going to close my eyes to it. Oh, no, of course you don't say that. You don't have that attitude, right? If I see somebody committing a crime, I'm not going to mention it. No. But the left, these people are sick. They're sick. I'm sorry. You know, if they're of the mindset, and it seems that most of them are, that it's okay. Let me back out here so I can see myself the way you see me. All right. So here I am. I see George just like you see me. So, if they think that in order to secure their own permanent and absolute, ultimately absolute power over the American people, because these are not people that love the American Constitution and people that love freedom. They want to tell you and me what to do and to ensure that we have to do it that way. And if you think that let's say you're a libertarian, right? Small government, minimal laws. But we all recognize that there have to be some constraints and restraints on people's behavior. And so I might think that I can safely drive down the road at 80 miles an hour or 90 miles an hour, but I'm not going to do that because, in fact, there is a part of my mind that knows the faster you go, the more dangerous it is. And I don't want to hurt myself or hurt somebody else. And because there is that moderate range of speed, and most everybody, unless they're focused on, that kind of narcissistic view that I can do whatever I want and there's not going to be a problem. Let's say they're zipping down the road at 90 miles an hour. And unluckily for them, a policeman is hiding his car off to the side behind a tree or a bush and sees them go zooming by, and his speed detector, often they look like a little gun, but anyway, he says, "Oh, he's going 90 miles an hour," and they stop him, give him a ticket, and things devolve from there. So let's say the person has to pay a fine, or maybe they got other issues and they have to do jail time. But what's worse than that? Well, what's worse than that is they cause an accident. They roll their car several times, or they cause somebody else to roll their car several times, or there's a collision and somebody gets hurt or killed. Well, we don't want that. That's very bad, right? So so there have to be some constraints. But how much constraint do you want? People have a sense of, out of love for other people and for myself, the community, and to keep peace and order, I'm willing to obey this and obey that and obey the other thing. But there, in certain, if certain restrictions were placed, like say there was an arbitrary curfew, you have to be home by, you know, sunset, and then you can't go out until dawn the next day. And there's no serious reason why. It's just that the police or the government wants to control you, or they come up with some psyop. Oh, there's a dangerous virus, and if you go out and you catch that virus or you give it to other people, you'll die or they'll die. And that's not true. They're just using it as an exercise in um, invoking tyranny. And there are other side effects of things like that. The measures taken to combat the alleged pathogen, which could be completely fictional, by the way, um, could actually cause deaths. And then those deaths could be attributed to the pathogen. I'm just saying this is a possibility, and there are people who believe that this actually happened recently. So, anyway, the Democrats and the far left, by whatever name, in the various countries around the world, um, they seem to tend to believe that a strong hand, an iron fist, or a jackboot in the face is what humanity needs. that we can't be trusted and we can't trust ourselves to do the right thing. Now, I'm going to bring this up too, just I'll be very brief, but I remember I read a book some years ago by George Lakoff, who is a linguist, but his book was about politics, and it's entitled Moral Politics. You can go find it and read it if you want to. And he was arguing for liberalism, progressivism, leftism, okay, saying that it's more compassionate and it's more perhaps more permissive. That's the way they want to present themselves. And who knows, maybe Dr. Lakoff believed that when he wrote the book. But it's not the way the Democrats are showing themselves to be now, is it? They want big government and they want to tell us what to do. For our own good, of course, but their ideas of what we must do, like you see a person and you say, okay, I can tell that that person looks sort of female. They have long hair, they wear lipstick, they wear women's clothes, but their bone structure is like that of a man. So you might suspect that they've done what we call transitioning. Anyway, this person says, my pronouns are she and her, and they really expect you to use those pronouns. Now, some people are going to say, okay, whatever, fine, have it your way and do it. And others are, have this deeply rooted sense that no, this is wrong. You were obviously born a male, and I believe there are only two sexes, and gender is sex. And the pronouns you've asked me to use are female, whereas your biological sex by birth was male. So that person may feel strongly that, you know, I'm sorry, I have to call you by male pronouns. Well, that's supposedly now immoral, right? That's wrong. It's not politically correct. And the person who has transitioned that you are dealing with probably isn't going to like it because it's part of a culture shift that, along with the change in some physical characteristics, partial change in some physical characteristics, they feel now that it's very appropriate to use the pronouns of the sex or the gender to which they have so-called transitioned. There is no transition in reality. It's surgical mutilation and chemical mutilation of the body, self-mutilation, because they are consenting to it or they asked for it. And they have, what's the word? This is the word that I'm trying to think of, right? Collaborators, that's not the word. Accomplices. They have accomplices in this thing that they've done to themselves. It's arguably not a crime because they're the steward of their own body and so on. So I'm not going to make a harsh judgment against them for what they did. I'm sure they had a reason for it that seemed compelling to them. But here's the thing, whatever that reason was, does it automatically apply to everybody around them? And some people will say yes, and some will say no. I tend to say no, okay, with all due fondness and respect for people that have made the decision to transition. But I think maybe if we're going to have transsexual people or transgendered people among us, we should come up with new pronouns. So you should have a set of pronouns for a male, a set of pronouns for a female, a set of pronouns for a male who has transitioned and now considers himself female, and a set of pronouns for a woman who has transitioned and now considers herself male. That would pretty well solve the problem. And then you would also have men's bathrooms, women's bathrooms, trans men's bathrooms, and trans women's bathrooms. Oh, that's too much trouble. Well, if it's all too much trouble, then I think the trans people need to get used to being called sir in spite of having long hair and lipstick and wearing a dress, or in spite of wearing a cap and short hair and men's clothes when they were biologically female at birth. And maybe they still have breasts, or maybe they had them removed. You know, I don't know what these people do. It's like the guy on Jerry Springer I saw once upon a time. It's the same kind of thing. Okay, this person said he felt his legs never felt like they belonged to him, and he wanted to get rid of them. So he took a skill saw and he sawed one of them off, and of course ended up in the hospital and recovered from that. And then eventually he sawed the other leg off. And he felt a lot better about himself without those pesky legs that didn't belong to him. So, you know, I think, let's say I'm talking to a transgender person and I say, so regarding that person, do you think he had a mental illness? Do you think he had a mental illness? And if they say yes, then I would have to say, what's the difference between his perception that his legs didn't belong to him and he really needed and wanted to remove them? They bothered him tremendously. What's the difference between that and your gender dysphoria that led you to go and have, so-called transgender surgery? I mean, I think these are legitimate questions, right? Now, that being said, how do you deal compassionately with somebody who has severe gender dysphoria? I was born a man and I feel like I'm in the wrong body and I need to be a woman. And I want a surgeon to modify me so that I have female parts. And I want all that other stuff that goes with it, the hormone treatments. Realizing that they're going to have that for the rest of their lives, and it's going to make their lives more difficult. They will likely have negative consequences medically from it, or probably in all cases, there are some negative consequences because, the mind is trying to tell the body, there's something wrong with you. You're not right. And all the surgery and hormone treatments in the world can't totally fix that. I mean, these are things I am concerned about, and I'm concerned about them because I am compassionate towards people who have those problems, and I have often contemplated these things. But somehow a contract needs to be reached between people with severe gender dysphoria and society. And the contract, there was an attempt to renegotiate it to get normal people to accept the abnormal and normalize it. And normal people are now at a point of rebelling and saying, no, we're sick and tired of this, and we're not doing it anymore. Again, that's not everybody, but that's a lot of us. And if you want to know what the Galactic Federation's stance on it is, well, it's that humans naturally have two genders, and that's it. Now, beyond that, can people be cured once and for all of gender dysphoria? Probably so, using ET technology and techniques, but I don't know that for sure. I think that's something we're going to learn more about in the near future. So I probably obsessed over that a little bit too much, but you know, we'll call this video, I'll put the word transgender in the title so you'll know, and everybody will know when they come to my channel as they scroll through the videos. Oh, he discusses transgenderism, the transgender phenomenon in that video. And if they want to know what I think of it, they can watch this video and they won't need to go on and on about it in other videos. So, Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is one of my exemplars in terms of just becoming a very articulate person explaining ideas well. Um, and I'm not going to study necessarily. I mean, I will if the information is available, but Stephen Miller, how did you get that way? And how can I up my game since I view you as probably superior to me in the regards that I have mentioned? Yeah, that's okay. We're all different. I have things that I do better than Stephen Miller does. Okay. Now, there's another little thing here. Says, Schumer. Yes. Schumer makes astonishing admission about the purpose of big government. Well, he was on, I think, The View. And what does he say here? I'm going to listen to it. So Chuck Schumer here says basically that he's decrying the fact that there are people who want more liberty and more self-determination. And he seems to believe in, just like I said earlier, the government controlling everything and everyone and holding keeping a firm hand of control on uh, individuals, their businesses, their homes, the land and water that they own, their employees, and so on. And the government really should be like a big brother or a nanny. And I'm putting words in his mouth in regards to those particular terms, but essentially I think that's what he's describing. That a lot of control is needed and government has a definite place there to exercise that control. And he's got his hands balled up in fists. He's very passionate about this. So he's an example of a person who is ruled and run by doubt, worry, and fear. And he thinks everybody should be, and that the world needs to be formulated not in terms of what the majority of people want, and it really isn't even a matter of whether a more laissez-faire approach than what he's suggesting would work well or not. It's just in his mind, it's absolutely right that this control be exercised. But I would suggest to Senator Schumer to go back and look at the men, and they were in fact all men, although I'm sure they had wives and they probably discussed things and they were influenced by their wives. But the men who wrote the Constitution and signed it, right? Who wrote the Declaration of Independence and signed it, and so forth and so on. What was their attitude? Now, of course, one can say, well, they lived in a different world. Everything is much more complicated today. And so um, They may feel that there's justification that the more complicated the world becomes, the more technology we have, the more individual power we have, the more we have to be controlled by social agreements and an enforcement agency. But what we have seen that the American people who do have the right to, express their will by voting, let's say, and by other means, what they evidently want is, yeah, he's right. They don't want that level of control. He says, oh, they hate government. Well, no, they don't hate government, and they don't hate law, and they don't hate taking care of the environment, and they don't hate um, necessarily taking good care of their employees or dealing fairly with one another. He's assuming that people are wicked by nature and they have to be controlled. Now, some people are wicked by nature, but how much one size fits all control is needed and how much parasitism, like he says, they don't want to pay taxes. Well, they don't want to pay excessive tax. They don't want to pay for a gigantic bureaucracy in government that sucks up billions and trillions of dollars. And and these are unelected people who have maybe sometimes lifetime positions, and they work for organizations that um, use money irresponsibly, that are guilty of enormous waste and fraud. And what's the other term? Anyway, just irresponsible use of money or downright harmful use of money. It's like what Schumer is really saying and what the Democrats are really saying is you should be happy to give us, to go work for your money and then give a substantial portion of it to us. What, 28% of your income or more? And so that you're not working for yourself alone. You're working for yourself maybe two-thirds, and you're working for the government one-third, and then you hand that money over to the government and expect the government, you then abandon all interest in that money and you let the government do with it whatever they want, including undermine your interests and harm you and even do violence against you and your children and your grandchildren. We're not buying that anymore. We're not buying that anymore. And the fact that the Democratic Party has, fallen into, let's say, or evolved into, or devolved into supporting that kind of thing, spells their doom. At least I believe so, unless they change. And there's no sign that they are inclined to change. So I thought that was interesting. And um, part of the nature of humans is that whereas there are other species out there in the galaxy and in the universe that operate on a hive mind basis, and every drone is essentially given orders by its queen, and they're very happy with that arrangement, and it works well for them. This will never be an arrangement that humans will voluntarily submit to. It just won't. So here we are, and I think I've used up all my time, essentially. So I've kind of covered three things, didn't I? I've got to come back and make some more videos too, because I have other issues, but things I want to discuss. But yeah, that will do for now. Thanks for listening. And just a very quick codicil to this. or coda, an ending, a little ending piece, a little fade out. Okay. So, I'm free to discuss anything I want on this channel. Now, what's it about? Well, it's about the new golden age, how we're transitioning into it. Geopolitical stuff comes into play. Exopolitics comes into play. It's all mingled together. It's all integrated. It's all, what's the word? Entangled. Yeah. Quantum entanglement. My brain's not working quite as with as much facility as I'd like. So I need to go study Stephen Miller. So, that's all I have to say here and now. But I want to come back and what I want to do is watch an interview that I watched before. I'm going to watch it again and I'm going to come back and talk about it. That'll be probably the next video I record. But for now, I bid you a good morning, noon, afternoon, evening, night, whatever applies. And please like this video if you liked it. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And you like what you heard and you think that I might say some more interesting and useful things in the future. Because I'm going to do my dead level best to do that. All right. So see you later. Bye for now.